Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 63, brought to you by Wicked Tree Gear. Today I'm joined by Zach Farenbaugh from the Hunting Public. We're talking public land whitetail strategies and catching up on the hunting public's crazy turkey season. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And as always, joined by my dude from Iowa, Johnny Utah. What's going on, man?
What up, brother, man?
Oh, man, just living the dream, dude. It's what we do. Dream living here on the East Coast. How about you?
Livin.
Livin, yeah. I'm living so hard, dude. I got to spell it without the G.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So what's going on in Iowa, man? How are things treating you? So I know you knocked a bird down. I think we talked about that the last time in Kentucky. Yeah, we did talk about that. And you are still on the hunt in Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I guess you can call it that. I've been slammed with work and haven't been able to get out and do much. I've only been out. I think I went out one morning and one afternoon since I got back from Kentucky, but I did move a hay bale blind the other day. It was like the most comical thing in the world. I wanted to move it about 1,000 feet, maybe 1,200 feet to the other side of this alfalfa field. Mm-hmm. And so I had the missus with me, and I had a hay bale blind. And my idea was we'll just each get on one side, put it on top of the bed rails, of the truck, and just drive it across the field.
Right.
And so I've got my end lifted up, and she's like, I'm trying, and she can't lift this thing any more than like 2 feet. So after some quick contemplation, I'm like, there's no way I can lift this thing by myself. I mean, it's not that heavy, but it's big and awkward, and you're trying to balance it, and I'm like, I just can't do it. So I just rolled it 1,200 feet across the alfalfa field. And I worked up a pretty good sweat doing it,
Right.
But got covered in ticks and everything else. But anyways, I got it rolled across the field, got it in position, and I think tomorrow afternoon and Saturday morning, I'm going to try to go out one last time, see if I can fill another tag. Nice. Win, place, show, or lose, whatever. I'm going to call it quits after that.
Right. Nice. So is that the end of turkey season here after this weekend?
Yeah. We end Sunday.
Okay.
And last weekend I would have been able to hunt, but I was drilling soybeans all weekend. So this is the end.
Yeah, dude.
It's time to get into deer season.
Yeah, dude. I saw you had the big unit out, man. You weren't fooling around with that thing, dude. So
Dude, I'm telling you. So, this is a plug, not a plug. I guess maybe it's a plug.
Right.
This company, RTP Outdoors, they're based out of Missouri, and I actually met these guys at a big lawn and landscape, like farm equipment garden trade show that they hold every year in Louisville. It's called the GIE show. And if anybody's into dump trucks and skid steers and like big, awesome equipment like that, it's a cool show to go to. It's a big international show. I came across those guys there because their parent company, Genesis, does a lot in the lawn renovation and big landscape equipment. And so they got into doing these drills. So I met these guys and became friends with them, and they actually, I hooked up with them, and they loaned me a unit for a week. This thing is just, dude, it's the cat's meow of drills. It's
Nice.
So awesome.
Yeah, I remember we spent a little bit of time at their booth at ATA. Super cool dudes.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I've never personally used one. It's one of those pieces of equipment that whenever I see it in a magazine or if I happen to like peruse their website, it's like I just kind of get stuck there daydreaming because I'm like, man, the plots I could make with one of those things. But
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and they make it's cool too because they make. I mean, you had a big unit, big tractor, the whole nine, doing your beans. But they make some smaller units, which is really cool. That are like ATV size, if I'm not mistaken, that you can use too.
Yeah, they've got a 3-footer.
Yeah.
Yep, they sure do, and it's got like a wheel kit, so it's kind of an assist. As we all know, it's easier to roll something than to drag something. So
Right.
They do have like a wheel kit on that 3-footer that makes it a lot easier for. Now you still need a beefy quad or a beefy side by side, but it'll still, it can be done.
Yeah, because I know I've seen Jeff Sturgis has used them in the past using just a quad, and that was probably the first time I happened upon him. Was I knew that he was using one, and I was like, oh man, that thing's slick.
Yeah,
but, it's. I fantasize about having one of those, but
me too. Yeah, all I can do is borrow one.
Right. We're on that borrow pay grade.
Exactly. Yeah, that's like lotto stud money.
Yeah.
But it's worth every penny. That's the thing. I mean, it's my background a little bit is in that landscape manufacturing industrial world, and just the gauge of steel that's on that thing, like it's a lifetime piece. Like it's a piece you put in your will, and you give it down to your children and your grandchildren. Like it's not going away. So super awesome piece. It worked flawlessly. Simple adjustments for different soils, and the main reason why I wanted to go with that drill this year was the soils in my area, not all of Iowa, but the soils in my area are really, really sandy. So coming from Kentucky, when I first moved here, my thought was, well, just disc everything up 12 inches, 14 inches deep. Yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to bust up all that clay on virgin ground.
Right.
Well, every bit of my dirt washed away in the next rain. And then with that kind of sandy soil, you don't get any moisture retention either.
Right.
So, Coda packing is your friend. There's my tip of the day.
Pro tip.
But by basically just mowing everything down, spraying it with Roundup, and then drilling, I'm not disturbing the soil. I'm keeping moisture in. I'm eliminating a lot of those problems that I had. And, Iowa, it's hit or miss, man. We can have some really wet years or some really dry years. So by not disturbing that soil, whatever water we do get, I'm holding more of it because I'm not opening up that dirt and letting that sand do its thing and let that water drain right through. And
right. Yeah.
So that's the reason behind it.
Nice, because you played hell last year with some soybeans, if I'm not mistaken, right? Well, I mean, you had a shit drought too, so you were kind of fighting both ends of it.
Dude, I was trying to bribe the fire department to come out and water my food plots.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
I remember we were talking with a friend one day. You're like,
a $20 bill will not get it done, I can tell you that.
Yeah, right. Again, we were on that borrow pay grade.
That's right. That's right.
How many acres of beans did you put in, man? Like
we did 7. So okay. I had a friend of mine. He had about 1.5 acres on one of his leases.
Okay.
We did about 4.5 acres on a lease that him and I had together. We did just a tick over 1.25 acres on one of my leases. And then I did 0.5 acre on my private property. And I know everybody says, oh, you can't, that's not enough beans, just 0.5 acre. Well, that's not the only thing that's going in that plot. It's kind of an experimental plot this year, testing some new seeds, testing some new stuff from Tecumani that's coming down the pipe this summer. So that's the reason why I went ahead and did that 0.5 acre field the way I did it.
Cool, man. Yeah, I did. This is a little while ago. I did a little frost seeding, got a little Tecumani clover in the ground, but I haven't gotten into my full throes of my food plotting yet. This year, I think we've mentioned this on a previous podcast, but just as a refresher, mine is going to be mainly all, for the most part, fall food this year, which is something different than I've done in the past. I've always typically planted in the spring, but what I'm realizing, especially on my dad's piece being a smaller piece, 60-ish acres, there's not, I'm not going to hold a lot of deer there per se, you know what I mean? So I'm more looking to try to make it ripe for the right time of the year. So I'm looking more for fall food. And I know during the right time of the year, just from, watching trail cameras last year there, even though I didn't hunt it, that I had the right deer on that property, for Pennsylvania deer. I'll caveat it with that, on that property during the right time of the year. So I'm like, if I can just make it a little sweeten the spot just a little bit for them during that time of the year, then, that's what I'm trying to do this year. So, and I don't want to do too much because they're already kind of using it the way I would like for them to use it. So I'm also trying not to bust up their travel patterns and stuff like that. Cause I got a beat on a couple of them, and I'm real good for screwing myself. Cause I'm like, yeah, I want to plant food plots, so, so I'm good for doing that to myself. So I thought, this is maybe one of the first times that I thought ahead and decided to not do that to myself and frustrate myself. But man, I've really been I haven't gotten to get out turkey hunting anymore. Well, the weather's been kind of junk around here, of course, but I've had, same as you were kind of mentioning, man, busy with work, busy with, I'm loading up on the house chores now. That way when fall rolls around, I'm free and clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of insulation blowing, a lot of mowing, a lot of fixing, a lot of those types of things. But what I've been doing a little bit of, man, is playing with my domestic beetles, dude. Like those things I think on the show I'd mentioned that I was thinking of getting a colony of beetles, and I did get a colony of beetles, and I kind of created a habitat for them. So some of my weekends have been kind of, figuring out ways and building ways to try to keep the smell to a minimum for the wife. Cause I finally got the colony to a point to where they were ready to clean a skull, and I put a skull in, and let's just say when she hit the garage one morning for work, because they're kept in a garage, her reaction wasn't pleasant. Let's just put it that way, I guess. So I had to build some venting for that, which I did. But man, they cleaned their first skull, dude. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, that's very, very cool.
Yeah. So hopefully, I got a bear skull that I'll be doing here. I think next week. Going to be doing a turkey skull here in the near future, so they'll be primed and ready for the fall. And then the only other thing that I've been really kind of busy with, man, is I've been on the search for a puppy for my daughter, because that's happening. So, yeah, I told her, probably a year ago, I told her once we got moved into the house and stuff like that, she could get a puppy. And so she's, of course, not forgotten that. So she's been all over me about that. We've kind of got it whittled down to the breed we want to get. And now she's just, the full pressure's on, because I told her we'd wait till the end of the school year so she would be able to be home, over the summer to help take care of it and stuff like that. So, end of the school year is fast approaching. So I'm on puppy searching duty. And I think we've finally whittled it down. We're getting a lab is what we're going to get. So, anyone out there, or even John, if you know anyone who has labs, I'm all ears on that.
Yeah, I'll keep. You know what? It's somebody I know. Actually, let me think about this. It seemed like I did just see something that somebody had a couple of pups. I tell you, if you want to get serious about lab stuff,
mm-hmm.
man, you ought to reach out to my buddy Jeremy Moore, the dog bone guy.
Oh yeah.
I can set up an introduction there, because I know that he works with a lot. I think he works with several different breeders,
mm-hmm.
that over the years, and he's made some contacts with a lot of people, and
nice.
Obviously he picks the dogs that have a really good drive for finding sheds and stuff and obedience. So
right, yeah. This, of course, it's a quote unquote family pet. However, I'm hoping to be able to maybe teach it to do a little maybe shed hunting. Since I started doing a little waterfowl hunting this winter, maybe it can teach it to do a little waterfowl hunting. That's all wishful thinking. Those are kind of like my hopes and dreams for the dog. We'll see. I'll settle for it just to not piss and shit in the house, though.
Right.
We'll start there.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't pee and poop in the house, it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. If we can make that not happen, that'd be rad. But
or hump your leg.
Yeah, that I would take over the cleaning up his number twos. Like I could probably be okay with that once in a while if I just didn't have to.
Just let him go at it every once in a while. Like, look, here's the trade-off.
Yeah.
Don't poop in the house, but you can, you can dry hump the leg if you want.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get you a teddy bear. Dude. Just go to town on it. It's like, whatever. Just do it in the other room. I don't want to watch. Oh,
yeah,
man.
what's in Christmas Vacation?
Yeah.
It's best just to let him go.
Oh man! On that note, we got a cool show following cool. the dog dry humping. We got a cool show with Zach Farenbaugh from the Hunting Public. Super cool dude. You guys out there listening have probably caught some of their turkey hunts. They've been hunting turkey all over the country, just going state to state, getting it after. I think they started like March 15th, and I want to say they're in Nebraska right now, if I'm not mistaken. And I think this might be one of the last states. So Zach's a super cool dude. We talk some turkey hunting, of course, and then of course, they do a lot of public land whitetail hunting all over the country as well. A little bit of his background is he and Aaron, who has been on the show previously, used to work with Midwest Whitetail and Bill Winke, and kind of ventured out on their own. And they got a really cool platform doing everything public land, and they're really all about the community of the hunting public, to a degree, and kind of bringing back that feeling of being in camp with guys and sharing hunts with guys, and taking some of the competitiveness out of hunting that we sometimes get, whether it's on social media or hunting shows or whatever the case might be. These guys are kind of doing it a little bit different, which is super cool. And Zach's just a good dude, and he shares some really good stuff. Really smart dude when it comes to scouting and stuff like that. So he shares some tips there for deer hunting. So really good content. You guys should enjoy it, and looking forward to having him on. But before we bring Zach on and talk some Hunting Public, let's talk about our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. This past weekend, had my Wicked Tree Gear salts, not just for hunting. I was doing domestic duty with it around the house, so it's tough enough to hunt with, but workable enough for your wife to put her to work with the bushes outside. So the longest lasting, fastest cutting, toughest tree trimming equipment you've ever used. Simply put, the toughest saws on earth. How tough are they? Tough enough to come with a lifetime warranty. Right now, when you visit wickedtreegear.com, use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and get a 20% discount on your Wicked purchase. We're also brought to you by Exodus Outdoor Gear. The new Exodus Trek is a byproduct of all consumer voices who have been excited about what Exodus trail cameras have to offer, but just can't fit a $200 trail camera in their budget, and that's all right. A budget-friendly trail camera backed by the industry's leading warranty is now here. The Trek costs $145 and is the same proprietary shell design as the Lift series cameras, same 5-year warranty and customer service, 0.7 second trigger speed, photo, video, time-lapse, hybrid modes, and all with a single line backlit LED display for easy setup. You also get about 20,000 pictures with a set of lithium batteries. If you'd like to learn more about Exodus trail cameras, check them out at ExodusOutdoorGear.com. And if you like what you see, save yourself $20 and use the promo code TRUTH at checkout. We're also brought to you by Tecumani Seed. No matter if you're in the South, Midwest, or the Northeast, Tecumani has your food plot needs covered. Visit Tecumani.com and check out their product selector tool to help pick the right seed for your needs. Also be on the lookout for new products, as John had mentioned, coming down the line here in the summer. Use the promo code TRUTH at checkout and save 20% on your purchase. And we're also brought to you by Glacier Coolers, simply the world's finest. Whether you're hunting, camping, or fishing, you'll enjoy smarter design, stronger construction, and superior insulation of Glacier Coolers. Visit them at glaciercoolers.com, promo code TRUTH, and save yourself 20%. Also, be on the lookout for some new products coming later this summer. And without further ado, let's get Zach on the line. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I am joined by Zach Farenbaugh. Many of you out there listening probably are not strangers to him and his work. He is part of the Hunting Public crew, which has been on quite the turkey escapade since the beginning of spring here. And of course, getting after monster whitetails, doing it all on public land all across the Midwest. Zach, how you doing, man? I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, you bet. So I know you and I were catching up just a little bit yesterday, dude. Did you get some well-needed rest and sleep last night?
Oh yeah, definitely did.
Nice.
Catching up a little bit on sleep for the one day off here before we head to Wisconsin for the next journey. So
Right. Nice. So you're headed to, how many guys are going to Wisconsin? The whole crew, or?
I think everybody, but I think except for Brody's going to Nebraska to hunt with his brother.
Nice. Yeah. Get a little family time in. So like I mentioned,
always good.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned on the upfront, man, you guys, you're of course part of the hunting public, and that was, I think it was something that was well needed in the space. You know what I mean? As far as showing dudes that hunt like most everybody else. I think a lot of times when we get to some of these TV shows and even web shows to a certain degree, it's not really attainable for a lot of dudes. So I think what you guys are doing really cool. But for those that might not be as familiar with you and what you guys are into and stuff like that, if you wouldn't mind, just give me a little bit of background about yourself, where you're from, where you live now, and what you do professionally.
From Ohio originally, grew up in Northwest Ohio, and then hunted anywhere from there all the way to Eastern Ohio. My grandpa has some property in Eastern Ohio, and there's public land around there, and then went to college in Southeast Ohio where there's tons of public land. And ever since I was in, early high school, really had an interest in filming and, trying to, kind of go pursue that career. The only thing that I've ever really been extremely interested in was hunting. Never really been very good at anything else, I guess. I mean, I liked sports when I was younger, but, that goes away. And when that went away, I knew that I needed to try to find something to allow me to get out in the woods as much as possible. And right out of college, I landed an internship with Midwest Whitetail and moved to Iowa, and then worked there for a couple of years. And then just recently, I guess we started this new deal called the Hunting Public, and really our main focus was to just relate to everyday hunters as much as possible, and keep it about the group aspect, because we feel that that was a big deal for us always growing up, was hunting with our dad, hunting with our grandpa, hunting with our buddies, going to deer camp, turkey camp, whatever it may be, and really enjoying that social aspect of hunting. It wasn't just about, to us growing up, it wasn't a competition. It was just going out and having fun with your buddies. That was the main goal. At the end of the day, it didn't really matter who got the biggest buck or most turkeys or whatever. It was about who, just having fun with your friends. And that's really our main goal with this new journey that we're doing, is just to try to relate to people and keep hunting fun. That's what it's all about.
Right. Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I definitely take away when I watch you guys' videos. Whenever you kind of touched on it there, where there's a lot of competition that seems to seep into hunting, especially when you start turning the corner toward whitetails and stuff like that. And
oh yeah,
and it's nice. You guys. I read a comment somewhere. I don't remember if it was on social media or where it was, but someone was just commenting on how genuine the enthusiasm is whenever one of you guys, kill a big buck, or I know you guys look at long turkeys, instead of like beards and spurs and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, and you'll kill one, and your buddies will flip out whenever you kill one, and whenever you kill one, it's like they're freaking out whenever you do, and it's like you guys are calling each other. It's one of those things that you just hope that people don't forget that part of it. I mean, every one of us, man, it's like as soon as you kill a nice deer or a nice turkey or whatever, it's like the first thing you do is you pick up the phone, and like, at least I do, I go in my mind, like, who are the first 10 people I'm going to call? What I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah. And it's nice to be able to kind of share those things. I mean, I remember, I arrowed the one deer in Ohio there, I guess it was 2 years ago. And, I heard the deer crash. I didn't get out of my stand. It was like one of the first times I probably ever did it right, where I sat in my stand and just waited, put my time in, just kind of give him time. And I probably called 15 people before I ever set foot on the ground. You know what I mean? I was like, I just killed the biggest deer I've ever killed. You know what I mean? It's like, and I just lost my mind. It's like I called my wife. She was at work, and she doesn't even care. She's like, you did
right.
That's great, honey. I'm glad. It's like, but I still had to call and tell her too. You know what I mean? So I think that's super cool that you guys kind of make sure to bring that in, man. And it's funny, man, because when I watch you guys, it's like you won't see dudes get more geeked out than you guys do when you harvest and when you wrap a tag around something. That's for sure, which is cool.
Yeah, that's part of the fun for us, is just the group celebration. It's not, can't really put enough stress on that. It's just always been, I guess, for all of us, everybody goes through different phases of their career. And, there was a point when we were all sitting there and we're like, the best thing that we've done is hunt with our friends and family growing up. And, once we all moved away from our friends and family, it was like we found this little group of guys here that, we're all interested in the same stuff. And, it's just been our main focus, through all the phases. Everybody goes through and hunting, like at the end of the day, it's all about having fun with your friends, because when you're dead, nobody's going to care how many inches of antler you scored. Hate to break it to you.
Yeah. Breaking news here on the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Zach keeping it real, where you're going to be worm food at some point and no one's going to give a shit about how big that deer was.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I mean, I wish, hey, look, I'll never turn down the opportunity to arrow a nice deer, but
No, me either. I will say that.
Yeah, but the thing is like I had, I talked about it a little bit last year during the show, where I had this particular deer I was hunting that I had watched him for 2 years, and last year would have been the third year, and I told myself I was going to kill him on opening day if I had the right weather, and sure enough, I saw him, and I didn't expect him to be bachelored up, and it was one of those things. He was bachelored up, and a younger deer got spooky and turned around, and he followed him out, and he was behind some brush at 30 yards, and I just could never get a shot. And I was a little ticked about it, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's like I wasn't happy with the outcome, and that deer was kind of driving me nuts, to where it's like partially it wasn't making things fun anymore, because I was kind of stressing out about it. And, so when I ended up killing the deer I killed last year, I went on like a buddy's place. It was like three acres that butted up against public ground. And I'd hunted that public in the past, and it's just a small little, plot of ground that his family has. And he's like, why don't you just come out here and hunt, this weekend? And I was like, all right, cool. I hunted it one day late season the year before. And so I went out there, and I forgot everything. Like I forgot my camera, and I won't belabor the story because other folks have heard this, but it's like I left my camera at home and I didn't turn around to get it. I was like, screw it. I went to hang my tree stand, and I hung. It was the worst set I've ever hung in my life. It was completely crooked. I was getting up in the tree, and I was pulling my bow up, and like my tow rope got caught on my arrows, and it ripped all the arrows out of my quiver except for one. And I get up there, and I'm like a sweaty mess, and I get in the tree stand, and I'm just like, this sucks. You know what I mean? And I was like,
oh yeah.
And I was like, I'm probably not going to see any deer. All my arrows are at the bottom of the tree. It's just like, I was like, whatever. And so I'm sitting there, and I told myself, I was like, you know what? I just need to stop stressing about this stuff, and I just need to start enjoying hunting again. And I told myself in that moment, I was like, if I see a deer that makes my heart pound, I don't care how big it is or how small it is. If it's legal, I was like, and it makes my heart jump, I was like, I'm going to arrow it if I can, if I get a shot. Sure enough, like 2 hours later, this rack PA 8-point jumped out. He's not a huge deer by any stretch of the imagination, but it got me excited. He presented a shot at 8 yards, arrowed him, and I was super pumped. And it just, man, it turned things around for me, just like my whole mindset. Just that one hunt like that changed my whole outlook on, how I approach things. Because last year was for me, it was a little grueling. I did a Montana hunt, didn't arrow anything, had some nice bulls that we had seen and stuff like that. So it was just one of those things where I was really putting a lot of pressure on myself. And it's just nice. You guys have that show and that platform where it's like, I'm sure you guys want to arrow big deer, and I know that you guys do, but it's more about all the things that kind of surround that.
Yeah. Actually, my dad gave me they're very similar, told me a tip a long time ago, and it's like, hey, as soon as everything goes wrong, that's when something goes right. So don't get too worked up about anything. A lot of days I'd go into hunts when I was a kid, and then I learned the same thing that, pretty much have gone through the same thing you have.
Right.
Some of my best, kills have been on a day where it's like, I have no hope. I'm sweaty. I'm mad. I something, you forgot something, whatever. It's like, you can't get too worked up at the end of the day. I mean, it's just, yesterday, Jake and I went turkey hunting, and we were set up on this bird that I've literally been keeping me up at night because of what he's doing. He was going flying down, and he was standing on the edge of a lake and not moving but about 50 yards all morning. And some jakes came in and looked like they ran him off. Well, he just looped around and came right to us. And at the time, the jakes, had run him off, and that was the last thing I knew. And I was sitting there all bummed out, and all of a sudden there he's at the decoys. So, as soon as you get down, that's when you just got to keep grinding and keep your focus, because, you never know when things are just going to change. It may change in that day,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'll happen in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? That's the crazy part about it. That's a good segue, man. I want to talk a little bit, about turkey hunting. I know. So I guess let me ask you this, man. How many states have you guys hit so far this turkey season?
So we started in Alabama, then we went to Mississippi from there. We went home for a little breather. Then we went to Oklahoma. And then Greg, Aaron, and Jake hunted Nebraska, and I went to Ohio. And then Missouri. I was in New York for a little bit, and then Iowa, and then we're going to Wisconsin tomorrow. So however many that is.
my Pluson's not too good right now, but that's a lot.
I had my fingers out, and I got over 5. Got out of control.
Over 5 is just not stopped. Yeah. Anything after Wisconsin, or is that the end of the road for you guys?
I'm not. I can never put anything. Say anything for sure, but I would say that's probably going to be wrapping it up for this year. Right. Sadly, because I was just telling Aaron, it's like, dude, I'm addicted. Like I need to go do other things in life, but at the same time, like I'm not ready. And you'd think starting on March 15th,
right,
we'd be burnt out, but like, man, we're just itching to go again. It's like, right. It's kind of crazy, a lot of, and there's nothing wrong with this, I guess, if it's somebody else's thing, but like, I love deer hunting, but I also love turkey hunting, and I also love chasing fish. So,
right.
It's like, I just love the outdoors. And once I'm on something for a little bit, it's like, I have a hard time stopping until you get a little taste of the next. But
right.
Yeah, I would say once we're done with Wisconsin, then I'll start thinking about doing a little bit more fishing. I think we're going to do, a little bit of fishing this summer and try to get some of that up on our YouTube channel as well. Just to kind of change the pace of things. We all love the outdoors, so
right.
Just any way to get out and do something it's a good excuse, I guess. So
right, yeah. And for anyone out there listening that isn't aware, the Hunting Public YouTube channel, these guys have been chasing turkeys all spring long in a bunch of different states, trying to fill tags, and it's been really, really cool to watch. What kind of spawned that? Was that just something where you guys were like, hey, you know what, we should just go to like every state and hunt turkeys, or was there like an idea behind it, or was it really just like, you know what, we should just hunt a bunch of states?
Well, in the past, specifically last year, Aaron and I, when we were still doing Spring Thunder, we had traveled, I don't know, probably 5 states last year. I think we did Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Wyoming last year. So we, we're, that kind of piqued our interest of just traveling, and we really enjoy that aspect of going to a different state, trying to figure it out, the whole process as a team, kind of figuring something out. And then this year, it was just no question, like we had to try it. We decided, like, hey, even if we run out of money, like we're going to do it, because this is what, this is, I don't know, I guess, for one, what we want to do, and for two, we feel like to travel and hit as many different states as possible is a way to keep it relevant to viewers, for hunting public land in, hopefully, your state, for example, like any viewer's state, then, we're living what they're living, and that's our main goal, is to kind of put ourselves in the viewer's shoes, because I guess if we're all going to, we're always saying we want to learn as a group, us and the viewers, helping each other as a hunting community, I guess.
Right.
And we don't feel like we're going to do that if we just hunt our home state.
Right. Yeah. I hear you. So speaking of learning, what was there anything that I guess that you've learned that you didn't expect to during the turkey hunts over this spring?
Yeah, I'm sure there's about a million things,
right,
but
right.
I think the one thing that is really interesting is, and one thing I'll point out is, every state is different, and every region of every state is different. Not one county is exactly the same, and definitely not one state is exactly the same. Some places have more pressure. Some places have more turkeys. Some places have more turkeys different years. For example, I went to Ohio this year, and I've hunted Ohio for my whole life. It had more turkeys in it this year than any other year because there was a cicada hatch 2 years ago. So the number of 2-year-old birds were thick, so there's a lot of turkeys. And, there's not a lot of like real set rules in turkey hunting, I guess. So where in one state, your late season may be the best time to hunt. Other states, the first week may be the best time to hunt.
Right.
And some states, the first couple weeks you're hunting totally hen-up birds and aren't gobbling, and then, the next state you go to, the first week is on fire. And then, like here in Iowa, we always say right now is the best time frame. I mean, we just stacked them up in Iowa this past week, but, in my past experiences hunting Ohio, by the end, you're struggling because the pressure is heavy. People are keeping, getting those birds pretty educated at that point, and the vegetation's different, and the season time frame is just different. Everything's different in every state. So I would say that's the biggest thing I've learned traveling a lot is like there's not a ton of like things that are set in stone, I guess. Every spot's different. Even every piece of public land's different. I mean, I've hunted specific areas in two different places in Mississippi, several different places in Ohio, several different places in Iowa, and from place to place, piece of public to piece of public, whatever it may be, they're all different. And it's just little things can make a big difference, I guess. Right. And I guess that's the biggest thing for me. And don't get discouraged if you're a turkey hunter and you're not seeing the same results in the same time frame or the same results, same tactics. Everything just varies so much in turkey hunting as well as deer hunting. It's like we're always saying, what works for us here in Iowa or what works for somebody in Ohio may not work for somebody who's in Michigan. You may have to have a little bit different tactic, and that's something that when we're traveling, we're trying to learn these things and help everybody, be on kind of the same page or try to help, bring new ideas to different, to ourselves, really. Right. It start, just open our eyes a little bit more and then try to, I guess, relate to everybody as much as we can.
Right. Now, did you mentioning that everything's kind of different each state, each county and so forth, did you make any, I guess, effort to try to time up when you would get to a specific location if you had, I guess, previous knowledge of when that area is typically good, right? So I'm thinking about in terms of deer, it's like you kind of know, like in certain states, like, like for example, I know the one place that I like to hunt public land in Ohio during November. It's, it's happened 2 years in a row, the same spot where the rut just goes off for like 3 days. And it's like, it seems like that window of 3 to 4 days, that ridgetop is just on fire or whatever. And so I know that. So every year I try to plan to get to there for a couple of days, during that time frame. So I'm just curious if you kind of had any of that kind of intel for your turkey hunts where, this state, I know we've been to this place before, and I know that this week typically has been good for us in the past.
I would say to a certain degree, yes, and to a certain degree, the complete opposite. Like when we went down south to start, we knew we were getting into the toughest of the tough. When you get down there at the beginning of season, we're talking March, mid-March. 15, I think, was the opener of Alabama and Mississippi. And when we hunted there, birds weren't gobbling. The pressure's heavy because everybody's super jacked to go turkey hunting. And we knew we were going right into the hardest of the hard, I guess, when we went down there. But then by the time we were up here in Iowa, I was the only person to get us a tag that wasn't in the last season. So like when we're here, we know that the fourth season is generally pretty dang good. And in the past, we've stacked them up here that time frame. So a lot of us bought fourth season tags just so we could, kind of fill them as fast as we could and then move on to the next. But also, like, for example, in Ohio, when I went there, I've always had really good luck the first week of season. Just the way in the southern part of the state where I like to hunt down there, it's the way the season starts. You're almost, you just hit it right. And just from past experiences, I guess. But then on the other hand, like Oklahoma, we went in midway through the first season, or through the first week, and there's a bunch of turkeys that have been shot. I mean, we literally found, I'll bet you, 5 empty shotgun shells with a pile of feathers right beside it. So like,
nice.
We were kind of diving into knowing it was going to be tough on purpose,
right,
and going into places where we knew that we were going to hit it right on purpose. So
right, nice.
Kind of both,
nice.
Which makes it fun,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite, I guess, things about hunting public ground is, I hunt some public, some private. Here in Pennsylvania, I hunt kind of a combination of both. So, family property, it's a couple hours away. I live around the suburbs of Philadelphia, and all the family properties are, back toward Pittsburgh. So it's, about a 3-hour drive, 3.5-hour drive for me to get back to any of it. So I usually hunt public whenever I'm around here, and then whenever I try to pick some good weather weekends, if I have any deer that I'm targeting back, on the family farms and stuff like that. But in Ohio, it's like I've hunted, pretty much it has been all public land, and I kind of like, I don't know, I just like the fact that there's no boundaries, right? Like the hardest part was, so that deer that I was after this past year, the hardest part was I knew where he was bedding, and I knew which pinch point he was using, but I could only sit up on the pinch point because the pinch point was on our property. Right. But I knew where he was bedding, and the bedding was on the neighbor's property. So I could only get so close to him, you know what I mean, to hunt him. And I had to kind of, hope that no one boogered him up, you know what I mean, over on the other side without me knowing about it while I'm sitting in this pinch point waiting for him. So that's the nice thing about public ground is that you, of course, do have boundaries. Yes. It's like, but, you typically have a lot more, some, vast area to cover. So you're able to have more, I guess, flexibility in that regard.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite part about hunting southern Ohio for turkey especially is you literally have endless. You can park it and you'll never walk to the end of it. You know what I mean? Yep. And you hear a bird gobbling, you just keep going. And I really enjoy that aspect of hunting public land. It's really been the draw, I guess, my whole life as I've been hunting it is that, there's no, like you said, there are boundaries, but there's a lot of times a lot more land that you can work with than, I grew up hunting my grandpa's 160-acre farm, 2 80-acre pieces that were broken up. Mm-hmm. And, to a certain point, it was like, I really love hunting there and I always will. But the limited, land that you can go on gets a little bit stressful at times. So I definitely feel your pain there. Yeah. And even living here in southern Iowa to a certain degree, it's like there's really good quality public land, but it's like I want more of it. Right. It's like I want a piece where it's like 60,000 acres that you don't have to worry about.
Right.
If people are coming in hunting it, it's like you're not just limited to that one. Those couple pieces that are,
Right.
I think we probably only hunt total of 30,000 acres here. Right. So compared to other states, you got endless.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. It's nice to have those big chunks of land because, it gives you the opportunity to get off the parking lot and get in where you break that, half-mile circle that people are going to make around the parking lot or where they park. It's like get in there where you can kind of use their pressure, to your benefit. I wanted to ask you, man, like since you've been, hunting turkey so hard this spring, spring's typically a really, good time to be in the timber just to kind of look and scout for next year because you can still see some sign and stuff like that. Does that put you behind the 8 ball at all in terms of getting ready for whitetail season, or are you trying to kind of hunt and scout at the same time?
Man, life is scout, like it's constant. I mean, even when I'm in, like, I got family and a girlfriend that live in Colorado, and I went out there and scouted some public land. Just I'm not going to hunt there this coming year, but like, doesn't hurt to scout.
Right.
He was at work and my aunt and uncle had the day off, and I was like, hey, let's go scout. And like, right. It's just constant. It doesn't matter if it's turkey season, if I'm on my kayak fishing, like I'm learning something when I'm outside. And I think that, that's one of my biggest tips is like, don't ever stop thinking about anything, deer, turkey, whatever you hunt, whatever you're pursuing, don't ever stop thinking about it. Always have it in the back of your mind. And if you see a mature buck, or you see a doe, even if you see any type of deer sign, take note of that and really try to figure out, maybe I'm going in on a turkey and that's the number one thing on my mind, but I see a big rub. Stash that in the back of your mind. So that way, when you go back home, you're looking at the map, trying to plan the next turkey hunt. You can also take a quick gander at, hey, why was that rub there? What's he doing that's allowing him to be in that location? Is he there at night? Is he there in the morning? Is he there in the evening? Whatever it may be. Is he coming to a bed? Is he leaving a bed?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, just doing that constantly, means that you're always, you can never stop scouting. And I know, that's, kind of cliche, but I guess I'm myself and everybody else that I hunt with, they're doing the same thing, So I don't feel like we're behind the 8 ball, because we also, we scout during season. I do a lot of still hunting. That way I can just be scouting for the hot sign, what's hot right now, because I think sometimes, you can be behind the 8 ball because you're looking at the sign that you found in February, which may have been laid down on November 20th, but you're hunting it on November 1st,
mm-hmm.
The following year. And does
mm-hmm.
that make sense? Like, I think sometimes you have to just be actively scouting constantly, and that's
right.
It's hard to do unless you've got that. You kind of have to have that mindset of like, I'm always looking at something,
Right. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. And I think it's one of those things I think you almost have to get more comfortable with yourself as a hunter and that's, I think, when you really start to be able to kind of take that approach. I think being able to hunt hot sign it takes a certain degree of open-mindedness, I think. I think,
totally.
Because I think a lot of hunters,
totally.
because I think a lot of hunters, I'm guilty of this too. It's one of those things that I continue to try to break this habit. It's, I'm not, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I still will fall into this habit at times, but it's been more recent over the past couple of years where it's like I've tried to be more mindful about not getting too married to a plan, if that makes sense.
Dude, yeah.
And going in and just kind of letting the deer woods kind of unfold and tell me what I should be doing. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
kind of going laying my groundwork. I forget who told me this the one day, but they said your best stand is your next stand. You know what I mean? And so
mm-hmm.
and where I screwed myself last year in the hunt that I did, it was Ohio, southern Ohio, down near the border of Kentucky, big piece of public ground down there. Low deer density, but
I got a guess, but I won't say where you are.
Right? Yeah. I think we even talked about it whenever we were at ATA together. So low deer density, but hammers. You know what I mean? Like age structure,
sure.
Exactly what you want to see.
Yep.
And we had some on camera. We had a couple really nice, anything from like we had a couple 140s up to like 160s. The one might have been pushing mid 160s or whatever. And
sure.
it seemed like they just vanished once we got there. But my biggest fail on that trip was I wasn't aggressive enough. I was trying,
mm-hmm.
We did some scout work, put boots on the ground early in the year, ran trail cameras, had the intel we needed, had it right up until the time we got there. And I got married to a section because everything was telling me that it should have been right, except the sign, like the recent sign that I was looking at told me that I was like 3 days late. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I just wouldn't convince myself that that it wasn't going to be a good spot still. And, I ended up seeing a handful of deer. Actually, I saw all bucks and just none of them that I was willing to pull my bow back on. But, just one of those things where it's like in hindsight, it was like, that's what I was saying. It's like, I'm not perfect. It's like, I try to hunt the sign as best as I can. And at times I still get in my own way. You know what I mean? So I think you hit the nail on the head with that, man.
Yeah, I guess I like to think of it like a couple different things. I'll say in response to that is like, there's been so many times. I feel you 100%. It's like there's been so many times where it's like literally all summer, like now. You know, I've already got one in my head, and I already like for example, 2 nights ago we were turkey hunting, saw a tank, like just a huge buck come out of a bedding area that has been on my mind, but I don't hunt over there a ton. I saw a huge buck come. I mean, like no doubt a mature buck by himself, just huge bases. Like honestly, already almost like up past his ears, just like a giant buck.
Wow.
And I don't run any trail cameras or anything, but I just like to, because I feel like that hot sign and finding that hot sign and finding that stuff fresh is so important. But I've got this weird habit of like, it never works. I will get this spot in my head, and I'm so fired up about it, and I can't stop thinking about it. I'll think about it for like, a month straight before season, just like every night.
Yeah.
And then I go there and I'm wrong. And the reason I'm wrong is because I'm too stuck on that one spot. And then what ends up happening is I go through that whole time frame where I'm so locked on that, and all I am thinking about is just like one or two sits in that location,
right?
And then I moved on to the next thing. So it's not like it's a whole season, like I'm planning on spending a whole season there, but it's like the times that, or I guess the thing that has made me feel, like I guess I've taken a step, in the right direction for myself personally is trying to get like uncomfortably aggressive, like to the point when I'm telling somebody else that like I can tell they're just cringing at like my thought of like,
right,
I'm going to go right there. And it's like I bust bucks right out of their beds. I mean, I bust deer, and we all do, because once we started going with that mindset, we do mess up more stuff, but like our theory is hey, it's public land. If we're not going to do it, there's always a chance that the next guy's going to. And you know what? To be honest, like, I think, I think there's a little bit of like, just because of all the media wrapped around it now, is like, everybody's so afraid of going aggressive that like, in my opinion, a lot of people are actually doing more harm than good for themselves by being so passive. Because at the end of the day, every time you go in the woods, those deer know it.
Yeah.
Like later that night, they find out and they know where you were.
Right.
So if you're not going to be super aggressive, what's the point? So, and I don't think a lot of times deer are going to leave an area. So, we, just because they smell you a couple times. Now, granted, you have to do that in a way of like, we're doing this on tons of different pieces, like very spread out, like one or two sits a year, just going for it all the way. But, I guess it's been, the best stuff we've learned has been by getting super aggressive. You go in there and you realize, hey, this is hot, or hey, this is not. It's something that we do, whether it's with stands on our backs or just going in still hunting. Like, we're literally hunting our way in until we find what we're looking for, especially early season, where we may have a spot in mind, a general area, but if it's not there, then we keep going and we keep getting deeper and deeper, and then sometimes you bust them, sometimes you mess up, but that's part of hunting. You learn from your mistakes. And I think sometimes the mindset is too stuck on, I don't want to mess up. And so I went and I had a hunt and I saw deer, but I didn't spook anything, so I didn't mess up. Well,
right.
To me, I'd almost rather mess up something, and I'm going to be way madder about it. Trust me. I'm going to be like really upset. But at the end of the day, for next year, I got a way better grasp on what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Every time you spook a buck, you get direct information of where he was at that time, on that day, whatever it may be. Like, boom, that is the best information you can get.
Right. Yeah. I think you're 100% right, man. It's like that piece of information there. People look at it, they often forget it, right? Because they look at it as a bad, that something bad had happened, but I think you're right. I think
it is to a certain degree.
Sure. It's you would rather not have bumped it. You know what I mean? And had an opportunity.
You'd rather have got him, but
right. But the silver lining there is that you just had a pile of data on that deer that told you something. And I think that was the biggest learning thing. Look at me with my real good English. I think one of the big things for me that I really started to kind of, when I started noticing that I was making better choices, I guess, was that I was being able to see a deer and start to almost like playing it backwards where he came from, and like being able to kind of almost in the moment, like take into consideration the direction he's moving from, the direction the wind is blowing, what the terrain is around where he was coming through, so I could kind of figure out what he was probably using to get there. Like all those things started becoming natural, and that takes time of sitting in the woods. It takes time of watching deer. It takes time of looking at topography maps and stuff like that, and kind of starting to almost like work backwards to find where they're at. And that was something I actually talked to Bill Winke about a little bit, because I think he's really good at that. I know he uses cameras, and you, I'm sure, probably have really in-depth, knowledge in terms of working with him and stuff. But that was one of the things I picked up from him a little bit, a couple of years ago, was just his ability to kind of work backwards and kind of shrink a circle on a deer, you know what I mean, and figure out what the core area is. And that was when I started kind of putting those pieces together. That was when I started having a lot more encounters, seeing a lot more of the deer that I wanted to see. Just overall better hunting experiences. I think you mentioned too that people, you all fired up about that stand. It's like, humans, like, we're very, we want to, it's confirmation bias, right? It's an aspect of confirmation bias. It's like, we want to be right so bad, you know what I mean, that we're going to we're going to screw ourselves and sit in that stand just for the chance that I could be 100% right. You know what I mean? Right. Which is, a poor move. But I wanted to ask you, man, like, as you're still hunting in and stuff like that, and you're looking for hot sign, what for you, because different guys have different approaches, right? Some guys, really will hunt scrapes, right? Some guys, are interested in seeing rubs right outside of what they think to be, buck beds. Some guys get fired up on finding buck beds or whatever. So I'm just curious for you, man, what type of sign gets you real fired up if you're hunting and you see something? And I know it's kind of seasonal too, right? You have to take into consideration how the woods are shifting and stuff. But for you, what's like a surefire, like, Zach's fired up when he sees this?
Well, that's a tough question, because it is so seasonal and it is so situational. But for example, if I do a lot of scouting, we all do, for buck sign in general, and we like to go into a location and we just make a big swath through it, and we try to hit as much of it as we can in one day, and then we don't come back until we're ready to hunt it. Now, let's say we have, on a given piece, we have 2 mature buck bedding areas that we feel like, we know where the bed is, or know a general, very small area of where that buck is going to be bedded. And if I go into a spot and I'm going in and I see really fresh big rubs, really fresh big tracks, really fresh scrapes, all those things are important. And a lot of times, like we said, it is very seasonal. But I guess along the lines of early season, if you're going into a spot, you're getting close to that potential buck bed, and you see a really big rub, that's really fresh, like he just shredded that tree, then that's something that I'm getting excited about. But if I'm going in and, all the rubs that were there when I scouted it last time, like, they're dead, they're not really opened up, none of the scrapes are opened up, then it's like, okay, maybe I guessed the time frame wrong on this location, and maybe he's somewhere else, maybe he's in that next bedding area. So you just keep moving to the next one, and if you find it there, great. If not, then that the time frame that deer is there, or the deer, whatever, a mature buck is there, is probably not when you went in there. So then it's time to just go back to the drawing board and think, okay, why was that there? What time frame is that there? And so here's a really good example, I think. There was a location we hunted a couple years ago, and late November, a lot of times you hear people talking about scrapes are dying off, bucks aren't hitting the scrapes. And I don't necessarily believe that. What I believe is happening is they're not scraping all over the place as much. Those mature bucks kind of get pinched down, especially on high pressured areas, public land, or even private land where, the pressure's high. Bucks get pushed into their specific little corners. Early in the season, October, they're real spread out. They've all the does are kind of spread out. All those beds, they get a max bedding capacity, right? They can bed so many places at that time frame. So we were hunting this location, and it was mid to late November, and went in there, and there was just scrapes literally everywhere, just ripped up. And there were we saw 7 mature bucks in 4 days of hunting in there. Ended up missing a buck and then shooting the same buck a couple days later. The point is that when we went in there and we started seeing that fresh sign, that's when we knew, hey, they're loaded in here. And we saw does everywhere. We were seeing tons of does go out, coming out of a bedding area into a food source. And in between there was tons of buck sign. So, at that time frame, it was just looking at scrapes. The scrapes were ripped up. And I've even seen in gun season, where you go back and you find a little bedding pocket and the scrapes are still there. We're talking December, mid-December.
Right.
Those scrapes are still opened up. So where there's lots of mature bucks, no, I'm not saying that I'm not going to hunt a location if I go in there mid-November and the scrapes aren't torched. It doesn't mean there's still not one in there, but It definitely makes me feel a lot better about setting up if I'm seeing really, really hot sign. Right. And I guess it, because it's so seasonal, it's going to change day to day, but the little things, I guess, and paying attention to those little things on the way in can really make a big difference. The buck I shot this past year, we were going in and we realized there's a fresh cut cornfield, and we knew it was a bedding area really close to that, where last year we'd found, or I guess the winter prior, we had found tons of buck bedding locations. And when we were kind of going from the food source into the bedding area, saw tons of big fresh rubs, tons of big buck tracks, and ended up going in there. And and it was after a rain too. So it had rained the night before, and there were big buck tracks from that night prior in that field. So when we went into that bedding location, we had a pretty good feeling that there was a big one in there. Got lucky and he went past us. But, seeing stuff like that is a really big deal to us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned something there, whenever you're talking about, I never thought of it before. That was when you started saying that you don't think that they scrape less, you think that they just get pinched down. And I never really thought of that. But if you think about it, it makes sense, right? It's they're not just all of a sudden going to turn off.
Yeah.
But the places where they're
deer are scraping right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hitting licking branches. I mean, you'll go under I remember the realization of this was years ago. I was in southern Ohio turkey hunting. Me and my buddy were walking along, and we were just really half-assing the turkey hunt. It was getting late in the morning, and I looked down. I was like, dude, that's a scrape. No doubt. They've hit this before. Right. There's an obvious licking branch here, and there's a scrape underneath of it. And we got to talking about it. It's man, they must just really hit scrapes. So, I mean, we were really just it was an interesting realization. And I guess I've heard about it since, other people saying stuff like that since. But, the deer are always using those glands when they're scraping. So, a licking branch that is there year to year, those deer are always stopping at it. It's just a matter of finding the ones that are hot and the ones that deer are using at the given time. And when you find that, it can really open up some really good opportunities if you can find them. I remember another time I was at home in between. I don't know. I think I was home for college winter break or something. And me and my aunt went for a walk in the woods behind the house, and got it just northwest Ohio, small wood lot. Got behind the house, and I knew there was a bedding area back in there, middle of December, around Christmas time. And there was a scrape that was absolutely lit up. Tons of big buck tracks in it, multiple big bucks in that scrape. So it just goes to show, hey, they're bedding right in that little bedding area, right there, right outside the bedding area. There's this massive community scrape that all the deer are hitting still. It's obvious that is the one area in this woodlot, and probably most surrounding woodlots, where the deer are still bedding. Right. Given all that pressure, they get pinched down into that one little spot, and you're going to find that a lot on, these are highly pressured little woodlots that I'm talking about. And you're going to find that there. You're going to find that in southern Iowa. Those deer get pressured, that big influx of pressure in late October, early November. just keeps pushing those deer further and further into their deep, dark holes.
So it's almost like,
and once they find that spot they're safe, they stay there.
Right. So it's almost like, a strategy, a really good strategy might be, what is that secondary scrape line, right? Like, what is that secondary area? And that might be where you focus your hunting efforts. You know what I mean? It's like, because the prime areas that are going to open up first, to your point, it's like most hunters are going to know where those are at, unless it's off the beaten path, kind of already deep in, you know what I mean, to where it's like, that's, then you might be safe. But it's really about finding that secondary scrape line, and I'll just say secondary scrape line for lack of a better way to categorize it. But
almost like a later. Yeah, I know what you mean. I guess. Yeah. It's just secondary to the primary ones that open up first.
Right. Exactly. So I'm curious though, man, because you got me thinking about this, because I'm starting to think. I guess I'll just ask it this way. So, do you ever follow, or are you a believer, in the, or I shouldn't say a believer, but do you subscribe to the idea of annual patterns? Because as you're talking about this, it's like when I'm thinking of that secondary scrape line, if you can kind of figure out what the mega secondary scrape is, like the mothership, right? Like the one all of them they're going to hit. And if you can figure out annually when it changes over, right, then that means the dominant bucks, I'm spitballing here, should be at some point checking that. And if they are, they're probably doing it annually around the same time frame, like the same week, within like a 3-day window. So like, do you subscribe to that kind of idea as well?
Oh yeah. So a great example of it. So there was an area that we hunted, and when I say I don't have trail cameras, it means I don't own any, but my buddies do, and I will obviously look at that information. Right. We went in and we made a big loop on a spot this summer. There's a spot, and all this is wrapping back around to the idea that, like, you always have to be scouting. You can't buy in. I think too many people buy in to, hey, I'm going to go scout this in the off season, the traditional time to scout, which is February, March, during shed season, whatever. Right. There's big hype on that's the most important time. Well, every time is important time, because all that stuff is very seasonal, because what you're seeing in February and March is everything. You're literally seeing everything from summer. You're seeing summer beds, you're seeing winter beds, you're seeing anything from summer to late season beds, and all the sign in between that. The food sources, the staging areas, the scrape areas, the rub, whatever it may be. When you're looking at something in February and March, you're seeing the whole big picture. Now, granted, if you're going into a new area, that's the best time to scout it, because you get to see everything in one swath, Right. But you always have to be picking things apart. So back to my example, I guess. I was with Aaron, Jake, and Brody, and there was a spot that Aaron and I had been looking at for a long time, and just had a lot of potential bedding areas in it, but we really had no idea how to take a random stab at it without going, on a big scouting mission. So one evening we went and did our 4-man team, just cruise the whole thing and cover as much as possible. And we came across, on a transition line, this just mega rub. It was on a big basswood tree and had 4 trunks on it, and they were all just shredded. And there's this just, one of those rubs you see in the magazines, Right. And that magazine rub.
That has many different meanings. Trying to keep the show clean, man. No, I'm just kidding.
So we went in and we just had a trail camera in the backpack, and we threw it up. And throughout the season, we bounced around a ton. I mean, we literally we get mad at each other if some guy's feeling or is getting a little too locked on in areas. Like, hey, dude, open your mind a little bit, And we all take each other accountable for that. Like, hey, if I'm getting too locked on something, just tell me, So bouncing around, hitting all our different spots, and the progression of the spot kind of went in. Jake and Brody did an observation sit before they had bought tags, because they were running the camera a lot early. They hadn't bought tags yet. See a monster get out of a bed, come right under him at 5 yards. So, of course, the old classic, hey, didn't have my tag yet.
Right.
So they saw that buck. We went in and hunted it a couple more times in the month of October, and then we laid off for a while, and our friend Sean and I went in, and we still hunted the whole thing just to get a little bit better understanding of what was going on. And in that day, we learned a ton. We actually got really close to that rub, and I was going to pull that camera, but forgot the lock and ended up running into three bucks, one of which was one that we were going to shoot, all bedded right in front of that camera, like literally like 50 yards from it. We snuck right up to them. They were all bedded. We were just still hunting, and we just caught a glimpse of their antlers moving. And we watched them, ended up trying to grunt to them, and they just didn't respond, and they just eventually worked off. Never spooked them or anything, but left that camera still. And then we went back in, first day of gun season, and Jake and I's goal was to get back in there and get close to that bedding area and just kind of hunt our way in the morning, because that's where we figured all those bucks we're going to suck back to. It was the most secure area, deep in that public, close to where we had seen those bucks just, a couple of weeks prior during bow season,
right,
where that rub was. And on the way in, we were getting pretty close, fairly close to it, and Jake ended up shooting just the oldest, nastiest buck I've ever seen. And we ended up that day checking that trail camera, and we went back, and that rub was not hardly touched until like a specific, and I can't remember the exact day, but I want to say it was like November 15th or something. Right. It wasn't even touched. And then all of a sudden, there was that mega buck that went right past Jake and Brody, and then the one that Jake ended up killing, and a couple other really, really nice mature bucks, just crushing that rub for like 4 days. And there's a reason that rub was there, and that we found it. Now, if you put all your time in on November 1st and get or late October even, get super amped that, that rub's on fire right now.
Right.
Or it's going to be on fire. That's when they're going to be hitting that rub or whatever, or even early season, even October 1st, right when the bucks start to rub, all through September, they're really rubbing. They're kind of got a core area that they're bedding in, broken up from those bachelor groups. You may think, oh, that's when that rub's hot, and if you get that stuff locked in your mind, you're not reading that fresh sign, then you're going to miss it by literally a month sometimes.
Right.
Like, if you'd have been in there on October 1st, you wouldn't have seen anything.
Right.
Because there was no deer going through there. They hadn't been pushed back to that area yet. But for a number of different reasons, that's the exact time frame that those mature bucks are there. And now we know that because we ran that camera there, and because Sean and I went back in there hunting right in that time frame, and we saw those big bucks back in there.
Right.
So it's just a matter of, putting the pieces together, throughout the year, not just in the time frame that is the traditional scouting time, because I always worry for myself and other hunters, if you buy in too much to one bit of sign and think that the exact answer to when that sign is being laid down, you can be totally wrong. And then you go in there and you hunt there, and if you don't have a camera or something, you don't go back to it. You don't know. You go in, you're like, oh man, that buck that made all that sign dead. Mm-hmm. If you were in there on literally November 12th, you might think that.
Right.
But if you're on there on the 16th, you might shoot him. And,
right.
and that's the main takeaway from that whole trail camera run and that kind of progression of hunting that area. And luckily we were able to get one out of there, but it was just a matter of really putting the pieces together of the time frame that they were hitting that and reading that fresh sign, because it goes a long way. I think I'm always worried for myself too. It's like, I was thinking about that spot last night. I was going to sleep, and I was like, man, I saw that big buck. I was turkey hunting the other night, and since I'd been up to there turkey hunting last year, and I saw there's tons of big scrapes and stuff. And I was like, man, I know the time frame that I want to hunt it, and in my head, as I'm laying in bed, I'm like, hey, don't get locked on to when you think the time frame is right. You got to know.
Right.
Those scrapes are there every year. You just got to find the day that's right. And maybe you hunt it a couple times and it's not right, but then maybe on the third time, they're all in there.
Right.
And you just hit it right. And that's where I think trail cameras can really come in handy if you got them and you want to run them,
Right, yeah.
Or you run a trail camera all season, you get the whole season's worth of info for that location. I think that's really important.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I've definitely over the past couple of years have changed. You mentioned a couple of things there that I thought were really kind of important. Whenever you're scouting, you're 100% right, man. When you hit the woods there in the winter, it's like you don't really think about it, but you're seeing everything. That could have been laid down in the first week of the season or the summer or whatever.
September.
Yeah.
I mean, you may have an October 1 opener, maybe in the first day of September, maybe in late August. It's just.
So
yeah.
It's like you're talking about. It's like as you're hunting, you're scouting, because what you do see, if you have an October 1 opener and you're hunting that first week of October and you're seeing sign, you may not be hunting the right sign at that moment, especially if you're new to that particular location and say you're a dude who's a normal dude working a 9 to 5 and you get your weekends to get out and stuff like that. It's like that makes it even that much more important that you pay attention whenever you're, on your ins and your outs, because that sign that you're seeing this year is going to help tell you what you should do next year during that same week,
right,
or during that same time.
Right.
And that was one of the things that really was a game changer for me, was when I started playing the long game, as I like to call it. It's like golf, or it's like golf. It's like I got a lot better with my driver. You know what I mean? Because I now kind of take the approach that all the trail cameras I run, I really don't give a shit what I see this year that is the first time I've seen a deer. I'm looking for the deer that I've seen multiple times over multiple years, because I've started to be able to kind of piece a story together. So I actually use last year's trail camera data to plan my hunt next year. You know what I mean? And then this year's data that I get, during September, October, November, or whatever, will tell me what I should do the following year. That's kind of how I started approaching it, because, it's, I'm a normal dude working 9 to 5. So it's like, I do take vacation time to get out to hunt, but it's like, I got to try to make the days count. So I have to go in with an idea of what's going on annually and how they're using different areas annually. And if I don't do that, I'm screwed. Like this year, the one property, my dad actually picked up a 60-acre piece of property. And it was the first year we had it, and we didn't do anything to it. And I just hung some cameras on it. And I said, I'm not going to hunt it at all this year. I'm going to come back and scout it, during the course of the season when I can get back, and hung some cameras. And I was like, and I'll come scout it in the winter too, and just kind of pay attention to what's going on. And then my dad ended up hunting it like maybe 5 days total, and I was like, I'm just going to learn how deer are using this and what they're doing. I was like, I just want to understand like what directions they're traveling and things like that. There was one really nice for PA. He was really nice deer. He's probably pushing Pope and Young 8-point, for Pennsylvania. It's a nice deer, and I had him on camera, and I was tempted to try to hunt him because we got a cold front on the opening day. And, I went and tracked my trail cameras a couple weeks later, and wouldn't you know it, the tree that I was planning to climb opening day, if I would have hunted it, he walked by within 20 yards at like 8:30 in the morning. So go figure, you know what I mean? But I was like, that's cool. I was like, because I kind of knew what he was doing. It was down a fence line. It was a nice, kind of like transition area into like some, an overgrown field, you know what I mean, that had an apple tree at the end of that fence row or whatever. So that's what he was kind of working in the summer. But what I learned was that the only reason I would have had an opportunity at him that day was because I got the exact right conditions. Pennsylvania was like the archery god shined on us opening day, because we got like a 20-degree temperature drop, high pressure, the whole nine. It was like it was like if Mark Drury drew it up, that was like what you got that opening day. A cold front rolled through, you know what I mean? It was perfect.
Right.
But you're not going to typically get that, you know what I mean? So, but what I learned by not hunting him was I kind of just watched, and man, October 28th through the 31st, I had him on almost every camera on that property in daylight for 3 days straight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So this year, where do you think I'll be October 28th to the 31st?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
I know
like,
where you'll be.
Yeah, he's daylight walking, you know what I mean? It's like, and there's no pressure on that property, which it's one of those things where it's, I'm fortunate in that regard. That property doesn't get a lot of pressure. So it's most other places I hunt aren't like that. So I'll take it when I can get it, you know what I mean? But, so it's like you were saying, man, it's playing that long game. You know what I mean? What did I learn last year that I can apply to this year, and then this year for next year, it's if you can't be a prisoner of the moment, I guess is the important takeaway.
Yeah. And I think another thing to point out there too, and I think some people get discouraged too of like, let's say, for example, if one of us wanted to hunt that big buck that we saw, that was also one of the other ones that was in there with the one that Jake and it was actually the one that Jake and Brody saw. Mm-hmm. That was also the other one that was in that scrape. Sean and I actually saw him hunting too. at that rub, that big rub that we're talking about. He, if he wanted to go in there and hunt him, I think some people would get super fired up and be like, I got to run trail cameras, make sure he's still alive. Well, one of the reasons I don't like running trail cameras is I feel like it can lock you onto a buck too. Mm-hmm. And I think that locking onto a buck, it has its pros and its cons, right? Like, I'm never going to bash somebody for doing it, but I think like it closes your mind a little bit.
Yep.
And like it can limit you. You get too locked onto it. So don't be afraid if he doesn't show up. Maybe he's dead.
Right.
Maybe somebody else shot him. Good for the other hunter. What you got to do is you got to keep your head on straight, and you got to think, hey, another one's going to do that at some point.
Yep.
Never forget that sign, because I do buy into annual,
mm-hmm.
habits.
Right.
Just because he's dead doesn't mean that all mature bucks in that area, aren't going to be in there.
Right.
It doesn't mean that like that was just his thing.
Right.
It's a deer thing. It's just like with turkeys too. We find the same thing. Last year, we got a turkey right up where there's a perfect roosting little ridge. There's a intersection of a fence row, and right on that there's a dust bowl there where all the hens are going through late season. Last year we went in there on a whim. Aaron shot a turkey, and then they were roosted right off that. This just a couple days ago, I was in there with my buddy, and we hadn't hunted there all year. And I said, guys, as soon as one gobbles right there, that's where we're going. Sure enough, one gobbled there. Ended up being 3 of them. Went right to him. Came right to us right off the wrist.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing. They're all the same critter.
Right. Yeah.
Like they're not this totally different thing. Now they all have their own personal, personality traits that
right.
make them their own, but they do the same general things. Just like hunting deer and turkey, you're hunting the same thing. You're just hunting them in a different habitat.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I forget who I was talking to. It might have been whoever it was. They were mentioning, we were talking about buck beds, right? And
mm-hmm.
how some people, they'll have a buck that they know they're bedding on this point or whatever, wherever the buck might be bedding, and someone kills that buck. He's like, man, that bed's still a good bed. He's like, there's a reason why that deer was staying there. You know what I mean? He was like,
mm-hmm.
it just made room for the next guy. You know what I mean? He was like, there's going to be a buck that's going to use that bed. He was like, you can book it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm.
it's the same kind of thing. And you're 100% right, man, because like I've tried to tell myself not to get locked onto this deer. I saw him after the season, so he's around as long as he makes it through the winter, doesn't get hit by a car or something like that.
Sure.
But there was another one that I'd seen using the same exact kind of pattern, or same travel corridors and stuff like that during that same time frame, who was bigger, but he was the only time
mm-hmm.
I ever had seen him, which made it even kind of cooler because he was a random traveler. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't seen him at all during the summer, the winter, the fall. He showed up for like a handful of days and that was it. And he was a hammer. But what I did learn was that little spot during those 3 days is a hot spot. You know what I mean? So,
mm-hmm.
I won't be shy to release some carbon so long as the animal is right. It doesn't have to be the specific one, just the right one.
Right.
Right.
I mean? And I think, if you take a step back and you think about it, like I love how mature bucks just use their nose, mm-hmm. Like I always laugh at like we have lots of video and stuff that we look at obviously. And when you see that big mature buck, he's like barely got his eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
He's so confident in what he's doing that he's like not even really looking at anything. He's just using that nose.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can tell like that their whole life is based on that. It's like, and it really goes for travel corridors. It's like if a buck is going to walk in a specific spot, there's a reason he's doing that.
Yep.
I'm not going to say myself or anybody is going to totally fully understand that because we will never be able to literally put ourselves in their shoes and smell what they can smell. But like
right
in a specific spot, and maybe it's even a spot that you can never get away with hunting because they've mastered it so well that they know when they hit that spot at that given time, those thermals and that wind and that sunlight hitting a hillside, creating the thermals, like they know what they're doing, and it's like, you just got to get all those little pieces put together. It's like, it's just helping you for the next one even, don't, if you get too locked on one, then you're not thinking about the next or thinking about why that spot worked.
Before we continue our conversation, let's talk about Wicked Tree Gear saws. Hardcore deer hunters need hardcore tools. Do yourself a favor and check out Wicked Tree Gear, the toughest hand saws and pull saws on earth. You buy it once, you buy it for life, backed by a lifetime guarantee. Right now, if you use the promo code TRUTH, you'll save 20% on your next purchase with free ground shipping. So head over to wickedtreegear.com and get a saw that's tough enough to work as hard as you hunt.
All right, folks, we're back. Sorry, we had a quick little technical difficulty here with the old podcast with the off button. So those off buttons will get you, man. They ought to make those red and blinky, or maybe they already do. I'm not sure. But I know we kept you here for just about an hour, man. I have like two final questions to ask, or two topics to kind of discuss. And the first one is, I wanted to get a sense from you, man. I know we've covered everything from the signage you're looking for, and we talked a little bit about annual patterns and not being a prisoner of the moment and playing the long game and stuff like that. I'm always curious, if guys kind of when they're scouting. I know you scout all the time, so I don't want to use scouting as like a moment in time. But are there certain terrain features that you really gravitate toward? You know what I mean? And I know, again, it depends on, I know you guys hunt a lot of states and stuff like that, so it depends on what you're kind of provided by the land to a degree in terms of the region that you're in. But let's just say you're in your home, your native sun state of Ohio, or if you're, at home now in Iowa, what are you prioritizing in terms of terrain?
I would say almost more than terrain. I'm interested in habitat, and I guess those go hand in hand. But what I mean by that's maybe more vegetation. What's something, or even water? What's something that's going to allow a mature buck to get away from people in a place that, like, you're going to have to be halfway crazy to get to? And he has no problem getting to it. For example, we hunt some areas that, are along a river that, you either have to kayak into or wade into, or I guess if we're talking Ohio, there's how many hills do I have to walk over to get to where I think that buck's going to be? And a lot of times too, what's going hand in hand with that is not only is there, maybe a hill or a water source, but there's some sort of thick vegetation that is nasty to get through. And is there a way that, obviously, what's the way that he gets in and out of that? And how can I get close enough to it with, for one, being able to see enough to shoot, but still be close enough to not spook him, and get close enough that he's going to make it there in daylight.
Right.
So I guess some of the things that have really interested me since I've moved here to Iowa is like wet areas, or just very, very thick, nasty areas that there may be just a slight little travel corridor where the deer feels totally comfortable traveling through that. I actually was reading Jeff Sturgis, the book that he had wrote, and he talks a lot about creating habitat, but he also, I talked to Jeff a fair amount, and he talks a lot about the bucks need to be in an area where he's traveling through and he feels totally safe in daylight. It's almost like he's got surrounding cover. So that's really jumped out at me as, something to target. Like how does a buck like to travel through a little hole where he feels totally safe? And you find that, I feel like you find that a lot in these wet areas where you can find where he's got one piece of cover on one side and he's got the ability to see on the other, So in Ohio, that would be, where you've got a hillside that kind of comes down, and maybe on that upper third there's a bench or something, or an old skid path or something where it kind of flattens out. And on one side, he's got thick cover that he can escape to. And then when he can look the other way, he can see maybe down the hill, and he can see a really long way. So if he's walking that, he's got wind coming through that thick cover, and he's got the ability to look down the hill on the other side. And if he hears, smells, or sees a predator, he's got the ability to escape really quickly. And I feel like a lot of times when you find that spot, you're finding or when you find a spot like that, you're finding where a mature buck's going to travel. Like so many times, you know, once you start finding these bedding areas, you find the travel, you know, the escape routes or just the relaxed travel routes out of them. They're always traveling where they've got quick cover. You know, a mature buck, he'll do it in the rut, but not very often. You know, not till he really has to in late November when he's trying to find that last hot doe. Is he going to just travel a really long way and just like put himself in a really vulnerable position? He likes to stay close to that cover. So if you can find a location where he feels totally safe, where nobody's coming to him from maybe even one whole direction, you know, that's what I really like to target on, is like, where's an area that literally nobody's ever come at that buck from. And then that can go anywhere from standing corn to a marsh to a river to, you know, a thick, nasty cedar and oak thicket in southern Iowa, where he's up on the, you know, the upper third of the hill with that thick cover on the upper side of the hill, and then, you know, an open creek bottom down below where he can see. Anywhere where he feels totally safe, where not a lot of predators can get to him from a whole direction or multiple different directions, even better yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lesson there is, you know, nice bucks, you got to kind of go where people aren't willing to go. You know, and that's just, you know, that's just kind of like the moral of the story. Or, you know, one of the things I've liked to do recently is, you know, take a page out of the old Dan Enfalt book and, you know, doing more of, not literally a book, but from talking to him or whatever, but is, you know, looking for overlooked places. You know what I mean? Places like, you know, that deer I killed in Ohio, it's like I probably wasn't more than 0.3 of a mile from my truck, but it was all straight up the side of a river, on the other side of a river. You know what I mean? So it was all, you know, pretty much vertical and nothing but green briars and blowdown. You know what I mean? Yep. So it was crawling over top of logs and underneath of logs to get up there with a stand on your back. You know, it was just, it sucked. It was it wasn't a far climb, but it was a shitty climb, you know? And it was one of those places where you get into, and it's like, usually if it's a place that, you know, is a good spot, typically it's like you'll see some type of hunter sign from years past, whether it's like a beer can or a soda can or something, like, you know, or wicks
or an old something. Stand or a drip. Something.
Yeah, you'll see something, you know what I mean? But I got up there and there was nothing, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, and I had seen, you know, this is one of the times I wasn't a prisoner of the moment. I read the hot sign, and I saw a nice big scrape that had just been recently opened up behind where I wanted to kind of set up. And at the bottom of that, you know, ridge that I climbed, there was like a staging area that was just completely destroyed. And I was like, all right, this seems like a good place to start. And so that's where I started. And of course, I had bucks around me every day, multiple bucks, you know, and I don't know, I think I saw 103 days. I was there for 7. I killed mine on the 3rd day, and I think I saw 7 different bucks in those 3 days. And sparring, you know, grunting, you know, ripping up trees, just like the whole thing you want to see, you know, in November or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like it was like you were saying, like the magazine rub. This was like this is like the TV rut, you know what I mean? Where it was like
the highlight reel, the rut highlight reel.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I got to live it, which was super cool. But it was one of those things where, you know, if I was, you know, trying to be all macho and be like, oh, I didn't hike far enough, and I'm not going to sit here. It's like, I was like, man, everything's telling me I should sit here, you know? So I was, swallowed some pride and said, you know what, I'm going to set up a stand, and glad I did, you know? So
yeah. Actually, I've got a funny quick thing to tell you. Yeah. I don't want to, I guess maybe macho. I don't want to think that I think of it like that. But one of the things when I'm hunting here is like, there are a lot more overlooked places here because there are simply less hunters, obviously, in Iowa than there are in Ohio and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. But I actually am very anti sit close to the road just because, like, in my experiences, the opportunity for that in Ohio is, like, slim to none. You know, it's like it's like a lot of places it really doesn't exist where you can hunt close to the road. Yeah. Now, in an example like you have, obviously, it works. Right. But it's funny. I don't like it just because of the nature of, like, and I got nothing against it. Right. I actually found a spot just back in the in February where it was honestly like 30 yards off the road, the spot that we decided we would set up on. Right. But, you know, it's hard for me to see that. I'll definitely run stuff over because I'm afraid of sitting too close to the road, just because it's not ever been a part of my, you know, hunting strategy growing up. Yeah. Because if you did that, you always felt like you were just not trying hard enough. Yeah. But it obviously worked.
Yeah, it's 100%. I felt this. I felt the same way, because like same type of deal. It's like I've never sat at a place like that. Like that was the first time, and it was just one of those things where I had Dan on the show, and we were talking about it. You know, just whatever it was, a couple months prior to that, and we started talking about just like, you know, he was talking about walking into like cattail swamps, and that he'll walk off the parking lot. You know what I mean? And there might be like a ridge that's right behind the parking lot, and no one thinks to hunt it because it's right by the parking lot. And he was like, and you'll kill a hammer out of it, you know. And he's like, and he's done that a couple times or whatever. And I was like, you know what? If it's good enough for Dan Enfalt, that's like, I'm going to try it. So
yeah, went out for sure,
gave it a whirl. And it, look, you know, there's other places where I've walked by and I thought about it too. And then just, you know, after I had, you know, got my wits about me, I was like, you know what? Not every spot that's near a road or a drainage that's along a road is a gold mine. You know what I mean? So it's to your point earlier, it's like, you've got to read that hot sign. Because if that hot sign wouldn't have been there, I would have kept going, you know. But it was just like, it was one of those things where I was like, this seems like a good place. It was away from like all the cornfields and all the soybean fields. So it was, you know, there was the closest truck to me was probably like, I passed him 2 miles down the road. So it's like I had the area kind of to myself. You know, so all those things were kind of playing in my favor. And once I saw the hot sign and got up there and saw that I didn't have any other hunter sign that was up there from years past, it was like, that was when I kind of sealed the deal. You know what I mean? So I was, and I liked the terrain, or the terrain features that were on the backside. It was almost like a bowl. So it made it like a really nice, easy way for the deer to kind of move that ridge, which was kind of like an added bonus. But man, I know I've kept you here just a little over an hour, dude. I appreciate you spending some time with me, but I always like to ask before I let the hostages go if they'll entertain me with one hunting story. Could be a near miss, could be one that you bagged, but you know, give me every detail from the state that you were hunting, who you were with, and all the details from the tailgate back to the truck.
Like a favorite one?
It could be your favorite. It could be your worst. You know, it's up to you, man. I'll leave it up to your discretion,
dude.
I know.
Well, I got two. I got two.
All right.
And I'll make one a little long, make one a little quick.
All right.
I'll warn you. I talk a little bit.
I love it, man. I love
it. you saying kept me longer than an hour, dude. I like there's always so much more.
Right.
But so one of my favorite things just recently that happened was we had just recently started this. You know, we just started this new deal, or you know, it basically hadn't really even started it. We were just kind of flirting with the, you know, we had all like just gone our separate ways from our last job, and we were, you know, we hadn't even really started this, hadn't even planned it, you know. Right. We had just like, we were like pretty much just like trying to figure out what we're going to do next in life. And it was like kind of sitting at home. It was like, hey, Nebraska's open. So we drove, myself, Jake, and Brody drove to Nebraska, and we just went through the whole process of trying to learn an area, big piece of public land, and learned an area. And what we were doing, our whole strategy, I guess, real quickly was, let's go in, you know, there's specific areas where we know these deer are bedding. Let's go in, let's scout them by still hunting, like literally getting right in there with them. And it's early, you know, there's not a lot of pressure right now. So we feel that we're not going to totally blow something up. If we find something good, we'll wait a couple days and then we'll come back and then hunt it. And through doing that, we had a couple encounters. Like we had an encounter with a giant buck with Brody and I had still hunted an area, found just a couple mega buck beds, and found this little pinch that they were working right between where they were feeding into that bed. And we went in there on the best morning day, we're super fired up, and sure enough, there were 3 shooter bucks, one of which was just an absolute toad coming right at the bedding area. And long story short, we watched them for quite a while, and they eventually got spooked by something, and they ran. And at the time, and Jake was observing from a long distance away. He was way up on the hill, like 3/4 of a mile away. We could just barely see him up there. He was just observing to see, if the deer were actually using a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And that buck ran. And when that buck ran, he ran right past Jake, like 20 yards past him. And from our perspective, it looked like Jake had spooked the buck. And in hindsight, we watched all the footage back. A coyote or something had to have spooked him because he was looking in the total opposite direction of where we were and where Jake was.
Right.
Like there was no spooking from our. Well, and then he ran right towards Jake. But the last thing I see is this huge buck running up the hill, and I was like, "Oh no!" Like something happened. Like I don't know what happened. Next thing I see is Jake running down the hill and the buck running in front of him. And I'm thinking Jake's chasing after this buck. Well, for like an hour until I got back to him because we had no cell phone service or whatever. We were just like meeting back at the truck and we had a long hike out of there. I'm thinking Jake is just totally busted this whole thing. Well, in hindsight, like I said, a coyote must have spooked him or something. But we ended up watching the footage back and realizing something else and went wrong. But it was just a hilarious moment where we thought Jake had spooked this buck, and we were like pretty frustrated at him. But ended up going into a different spot, and our whole plan was just to wind bump an area. And basically, with a wind bump, we're going in and we're straight up blowing a bedding area out by scent.
Mm-hmm.
One guy is just kind of still hunting through the bedding area, letting the scent drift through it. And when we were doing that, I was pushing towards Jake and Brody. And we've had it work in the past, and we do it a lot during the gun seasons, that wind bump. But when I was doing that, I got to this deep, not a deep corner, I guess it was actually a spot right off the road, a little overlooked place. It's just this really thick bedding area. And when I got in there, I saw all kinds of buck beds, fresh rubs in them. They've obviously just shed their velvet. So there's tons and tons of fresh rubs that I know that are from like just that week. And ended up bumping a buck out of the bedding area, and he went the wrong way. But we went back in there a couple days later, and we hunted it 2 days in a row. And on the second to last morning, ended up having what we believe that same buck come right back in to like 10 yards, shot him at point blank. Wow. And that was a spot that was overlooked. Right off the road, I ranged the road. It was like 220 yards off the road.
Nice. So
it was just an area that I don't think a lot of people have hunted. But you could tell actually somebody had sat in the same tree as us many years ago. There's a branch you could tell had been cut by somebody a long time ago. But
right,
it was just one of those spots that not a lot of people were going into, and not a lot of people were surely not bow hunting it at that time frame.
Right.
And that. When that arrow hit home, I guess the whole process and the three of us working together to put the pieces together on that was just like kind of a feeling I don't know that I've ever really had. It was
right.
Pretty awesome, and it was our buck. It wasn't
right.
my buck; it was our buck, and that was special to me because it was kind of a turning point in, I guess, all of our lives to a certain degree. We didn't really know what was next, and we went on a whim, and we figured it out, and we were really, really proud of that. And
that's awesome.
It's, definitely not the biggest buck that I've ever shot, but that doesn't matter. It's not the size of the buck that makes the hunt. It was all the things that took place beforehand, and we finally figured it out. And, just the sense of joy that we had and relief that we finally put it together was unmatched, I guess.
Right.
But,
well, dude, just watching him run after the deer would have been enough. Like I'm thinking of that in my mind. Like I'm watching it happen, and I was just like,
dude,
what the hell is that fool doing running after that deer?
Oh, dude, yeah. We were Brody and I were like, well, what the hell is he doing? Like, and then we watched it back, and like I said, we figured out that Well, and what he was doing while he was running was he was trying to figure out where they were going,
Right.
which was good.
Right.
But like, it was just really funny. Like, from our perspective, it was just this really screwball thing. But yeah, that was a pretty hilarious.
Right.
Hilarious. And it was full of ups and downs on that trip, and it was really good, the way you want it to go almost.
Right. So what's the second one? What's numero dos?
So the second one is, this turkey season's been really good, and we've been able to knock down a lot of birds, and actually went to Ohio to my home state and got to hunt with two of my best friends, and we really knocked them out there in Ohio, and pretty much had the best week of turkey hunting in Ohio we've ever had by a long shot. And I turned around and went to New York for a few days and hunted with a friend, and I struggled so bad there that like I have my tagged up in my room above my bed, so I have to look at it for the next year because I can't live with myself for just not even really, like, took the last morning to really be in the game. And I think that, I really enjoy the aspect of, having motivation for the next time. And right. I think that, it's a simple thing, you're not going to have success on every trip, but I think just having that anticipation and having that drive for the next time is important to me. So
nice.
I think just having a little bit of motivation to keep learning is a big deal, because I think sometimes it is easy to get content with what you know, and when you run into something that you don't know and you had a hard time figuring out, it's like, okay, I got to get back to the drawing board and really figure out what the things that I could have done differently are. Maybe the next time I won't have success either, but as long as I feel like I've improved, that's the main thing. And I always say you learn more from your mistakes than your success. 100% believe that, and I believe that in all aspects of life. You don't learn from the things that you did right. Yeah. And not as much, at least, as the things that you've done wrong.
Yeah, I should be wise beyond my years then at this point, is how I kind of feel about it. How I feel about that. I will say this though, man, that y'all show, the hunting public, you guys do a great job of kind of bringing the viewers in and providing lessons along the way, and I think what you guys are doing is awesome. It's like I enjoy watching it. My daughter sits down on the couch and watches it with me. I'll throw it on Apple TV, throw some YouTube on in the evenings, and watch some turkey hunts. Watch you in a ghillie suit from now, every now and then, and what you guys are doing is awesome. I wish you continued success with that. But before I let you go, if you wouldn't mind, man, let folks out there listening know where they can find out more about you, more about the hunting public, and so forth.
Well, you can check us out on YouTube. That's where most of our content is. We're also on the Amazon platform. You can watch it on there. We're also on Facebook as The Hunting Public, and Instagram as The Hunting Public, and we all have, our own, I guess, Instagram pages too, just our names and stuff like that. So, go over and give those things a follow. It really helps us out, and just become part of the community. I guess that's the main thing. We do our best to, communicate with everybody that's viewing, commenting, anything like that. And our main goal is just to learn together as a group. We don't have all the answers, and nobody really does. So it's always good to get others' opinions and hunt as a team, I guess. And the best way to do that we've found is, through the social platforms that we're on, and we feel like things are going well, and we appreciate all the support.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks for coming on, dude. I appreciate it. This was awesome. We got to do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, anytime. I'd be more than happy. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, man. Thanks.
All right, folks, that is a wrap. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Zach for coming on the show. Be sure to check out the Hunting Public YouTube page and give Zach a follow on Instagram. Awesome dude, and looking forward to having him back on. A bit of housekeeping here before I let you all go. First, if you haven't, be sure to check out podcast number 62 for a chance to win a Trophy Ridge React site. I'll be picking the winner 1 week from today to announce on May 30th, so check that out. Also, there will be a new section of the Truth from the Stand website launching soon. If you've been following me on Instagram, you've probably noticed that I've been playing around with some domestic beetles, and I'll be doing some skull cleaning and European mounts this fall. So All the info will be on the site, and hit me up if you'd like for me to give you a hand with your next harvest. And if you haven't, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. That would be super cool. You'll want to make sure that these are all delivered to your mobile devices, as we'll be doing some additional giveaways with Exodus here in the near future for Velvet Fest. And before we shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Wicked Tree Gear, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Trophy Ridge, Ozonics, Obsession Bows, Tecumani Seed, Glacier Coolers, Ramcat Broadheads, and Trophy Taker Rests. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
Oh,